The release of the Epstein files has been presented as a major transparency effort, opening millions of pages of court records, investigative documents, flight logs, and witness statements linked to convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein, and the years-long investigations into his crimes. Millions of documents were released to the public in several batches, but questions remain over how much material has yet to be disclosed. What has been released offers a deeper look into Epstein's world and the network of powerful figures, associates, and institutions connected to him. Some of the victims, I'm going to call them survivors, of his crimes have long called for greater transparency. But alongside those demands for disclosure came calls for caution. Survivors and their advocates wanted to ensure that anyone who wished to remain anonymous would be protected. While authorities said survivors' names and other identifying information had been redacted, concerns emerged that some released documents may still have contained information capable of identifying survivors or other private individuals. The Department of Justice warned that some sensitive personal information may have been released unintentionally. At the same time, public attention became fixated on the names appearing throughout the files. And it's important to stress that being mentioned in the Epstein files is not in itself evidence of wrongdoing. So just how much material has been released, what information may have remained or remains exposed, and when concerns were raised, were documents corrected, updated, or withdrawn? My colleagues Julia Bayer and Lewis Sanders from DW's Investigative Unit have spent months analysing these releases and trying to answer those questions. And they're here to discuss their findings with me. Welcome to you both. It's really great to have you here. So I'll start with you, Julia. As I've just mentioned, you spent months analysing these releases. So what was the single most surprising, shocking, or significant finding from your investigation?
So actually there were two things, but one that made us shaking our heads all the time was that there's up till today still information to identify survivors unredacted and accessible for the public in the DOJ's library accessible. So I'm talking about not only names, full names like first name and last name, email addresses, and even some images, so faces are still unredacted. And that was so surprising because throughout the last months, not also that the DOJ faced criticism about their failure of not following the law and redacting properly the survivors of sexual abuse, but also survivors themselves, they came out public, also explaining how much impact it had being exposed. And then still we found from some of them, their names still unredacted in the files. So I think that was like one special thing. We were like, that's incredible, such a big failure. Some of the files, because we had both data sets, we scraped our own a couple of days later, but also we had the original data set and we compared both of them. And we could see files, for example, from unredacted, or when files where survivors were not redacted, these files were completely removed, some were re-uploaded. So that was also an interesting aspect, like us saying, DOJ said we are transparent and we also promise to protect survivors, and they call them victims, and they didn't.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty shocking stuff what you're saying there. What about for you, Lewis? What was your kind of take? What was the most shocking, surprising, significant thing from your analysis?
I think, I agree with Julia on many of the things, especially seeing, when we first started, we didn't know what to expect going into these files. We were still kind of figuring out what would be our angle, what would be our story. And as we got deeper into the files, we started noticing that the victims' personally identified information was effectively unredacted in places, despite the fact that this was supposed to be protected by law through the Transparency Act, but also the DOJ made promises too, so they were supposed to uphold that law. I think one of the other surprising aspects was the fact that, I think there was a lot of newsrooms and investigative units that were using AI, LLMs to do the searches of content, and while we were almost tempted to do that, we decided that if we did that, we would end up possibly losing out on information along the process. And so we decided to go manually through the documents. We kind of distilled it into subsets of data and started going through them manually. And I mean, it's surprising. Of course, there's a warning on the DOJ website saying, hey, there's graphic content here, but when you're looking through different documents, whether it be flight logs, bank statements, etc., then all of a sudden you come across graphic survivor testimony. I mean, it jars you.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a massive task that you both undertook, and I mean, from what you're saying, I think it's a pretty good moment actually to bring in actually one of the survivors' testimony in front of Congress. That was Danny Bensky, and we're going to just take a listen to it, and then we're going to pick back up afterwards. All right, so let's play that now.
In December, before the document release, our attorneys submitted 350 victims' names to the Department of Justice as victims' names to be redacted prior to the release. In that first release, I found my name in 2 places. In that next release in January, my name appeared again, but this time the redactions were so far worse. The files displayed not only my name, but my phone number, my former addresses, where I worked, and other identifying information. When my name appeared in the 3rd file release, it became difficult to believe that this was not intentional. Despite my lawyer repeatedly contacting the DOJ, seeking protection, my information continued to be exposed. And it's not just my name, it's the identifying information. These documents contain disturbing yet incomplete accounts of my abuse. They were available not only for the entire world to see, but my child, my students, my friends, my employers, my colleagues, and my family. It was humiliating.
My immediate reaction is, how did this happen? I mean, how is this allowed to happen? And what are the consequences then? And how can those names be retracted?
I mean, there's a lot of question marks there still. The U.S. Department of Justice hasn't really been transparent about how all of these names ended up being released publicly. They haven't been transparent about how the redaction process took place. And so at the moment, it's unclear. They've only said, look, we admit that there was an error. They said this 3 days after the latest release on January 30th. They said a government lawyer basically said there was an error, likely caused due technical or human, various factors involved. But it's one of those things, once these names are out there, even if they go through, they start pulling down files, which is what they did, start further redacting them. Those names are out there. And the issue is, though, what we have seen also is that even despite the efforts by the DOJ to go through, revise its redaction process, flag cases, and deal with them, victims' names are still out there, even today.
Yeah.
And so this is a major issue. Now, what's the outlook forward? So there are lawmakers that have recently introduced a new bill called the Epstein Transparency Act 2, which would effectively allow basically U.S. state attorneys and victims to take the DOJ to court for the failures in the redaction process. I mean, like she just said, this is irrevocable damage that will carry on for the rest of her life. Friends, colleagues, people she doesn't know, random people on the internet, all now know the things that she went to and what she testified.
And Danny Bensky's gone public,
right,
essentially. So there are other people who have decided to just sort of stay quiet and just sort of, even though their names, information is out there, right? You also went through audio files as well, right? Tell us about what you found there.
We collaborated with the Fraunhofer Institute. It's called IDMT, Digital Media Technology. And they have a group that's specialized on detecting audio authenticity, manipulation, and speech synthesis detection. And we shared with them over 150 audio files, and they were able, with their state-of-art technology, to analyze and to find out are they actually modified audios in there, where there original audios, the same like with documents, like original audios and then later altered audios, and where the audios where the same microphone setup was being used, right?
Right.
Like, that's part of their technology. And they found out that the redaction was inconsistent in a lot of files, audio files, which confirmed our analysis with the documents as well and images, and meaning of what means inconsistent of redaction was on one side the style of redaction. So sometimes there were parts beeped and sometimes used a different sound. And then we found, which is incredible, in the same data set, like published at the same moment and also still today, both audio files, it's the same audio file, but in one you can clearly hear it's an alleged witness that's saying, I have information regarding the Epstein investigation. And the person is saying his full name and his phone number. And it's unredacted, still public. And the same audio file exists, but his full name is beeped and his phone number as well.
It's pretty shocking that, like, alleged witnesses' information. I'm really flabbergasted by a lot of what you're telling me today. I mean, this has been a months-long process for both of you, right? Sounds like a lot of work. Sounds like it's pretty grueling. Lewis, can you tell us just a little bit about that process, how that has been for you?
I mean, in many ways, when you're dealing with content of child sexual abuse, it's difficult. I mean, it impacts you. We went through a lot of files, we were going through a lot of different things, and it can start warping a bit your sense or your perception of reality. You know, when you see this whole entire network that effectively enabled this person and their Epstein and their associates to do what they did, you realize how extensive it was, how many players were involved. Yeah, I mean, that takes its toll on you. And one of the things that, as we were going through it, Julia and I, we always made sure to kind of check in with each other. How are you doing today? Try to take breaks also, kind of separate the space that you have or time that you have when you're going through the files, because you never know when something like that was going to come up, right? And that was really important for us to check in with each other, just see where we're at. How are you doing today? Did you end up reading something? You want to talk about it? And that was huge. I think that really helped us get through a lot of the work.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And now just tell us, if we want to read more or learn more about your work, where can we find it?
Our report, you can find this on Instagram and TikTok.
Yeah.
And we also publish on dw.com an online article, which is, the online article is focusing on explaining more how we did it, how we obtained the data, how did we verify it. That's a little bit more behind the scenes.
Okay.
And then you can also follow us on our social media accounts and
Right.
get information. Yeah.
Great. Well, it'll be. I'm going to read it for sure. I'll make sure to keep a close eye on this story. I don't feel like this is going to be the last time, unfortunately, that we're going to be speaking about this. But really great to have both of you here, Julia Bayer and Lewis Sanders from DW's investigative team. Thank you so much for joining us here in Berlin. And don't forget that if you want to learn more about their work, you can, of course, find it on the DW website, dw.com, and, of course, on social media too. I'm Pablo Foley-Elias here in Berlin for me and the team. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon.